Senator Back.
Madam Acting Deputy President, I congratulate you on your last day in the chair. And I also compliment Senators Madigan and Xenophon for the spirit behind the Flags Amendment Bill 2014 and the need and the desire to obviously try and encourage more Australian manufacturing. And I'm a hugely optimistic person when we consider this question. And obviously, I know, whilst they've mentioned the flag, Senator Xenophon quite correctly has widened the discussion well beyond the flag, and I intend to do so in a few moments' time. Madam Acting Deputy President, as a member of the defence family, I obviously have a very, very keen interest in the flag and the integrity of the flag and everything that stands behind it, as I know the vast majority of other Australians do. And so this morning, in considering what I would contribute to this debate, I made an email contact with one of my sons, who was a combat officer in Iraq in 2003 and was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal, the first lieutenant to be awarded a Distinguished Service Medal since the Vietnam War, and followed that up again with a distinguished career deployment as a combat officer in Afghanistan in 2006, indeed leading American, Dutch and Australian troops. And I was very, very interested. He now resides in the United States. I was very interested to get his take on this. And if I can quote just a couple of comments, you never know the successors, parents, Madam Acting Deputy President, until you actually ask them a question and get the feedback, and then have the opportunity to consider the maturity of the feedback. And these were the comments that Justin made. Our flag, he said, itself displays two symbols, and it's relevant to this debate. The Southern Cross, which is widely regarded as a symbol of our region, our history, our foreign relations. Australians, New Zealanders and others in our region use the Southern Cross for a wide variety of regional identity purposes. He said it typifies our unity with and reliance on our friends and theirs on us. And the other part, of course, of the cross, the flag, the Union Jack, and these were his comments representing the British Commonwealth. Having begun as a British colony, we've grown as a significant Commonwealth member, as a leader in many multinational pacts, treaties and organisations. Again, this demonstrates our outward focus as an energetic, involved partner on the global scene. He goes on to make some comments also about overseas trade that I'll come back to. I thought he might have picked up on the military heritage, the pride of fighting under our flag, but he didn't. He actually focused on Australia's role in the world, Australia's role in the region, and for that I certainly was very, very proud. I, like everybody else, want to see the encouragement of more Australian trade, more Australian manufacturing, more opportunities as the world changes. But I know Senators Xenophon and Madigan. I know Senator Xenophon more than I know Senator Madigan, and I respect them both very, very highly. But they both understand too, Acting Deputy President, that we are an exporting nation. We export more than 65% of what we produce, and our wealth depends largely in two areas. One has been the supply of cheap energy, which has attracted so much business and manufacturing and other industries to Australia, and the other is the strength of our relationships with our trading partners. I want, if I may, Madam Acting Deputy President, to reflect on some examples of where this is helping, has helped and will go on helping our relationships and our Australian jobs into the future. The first is a company which I had the pleasure of being the Chief Executive Officer of myself from 2000 to 2007, a Western Australian-based company. And why do I make the point? Because that company, which provides very, very high-level hardware and particularly software to protect the integrity of the supply chain in the fuel industry, a company that provided services and still does to organisations such as Shell, BP, Esso, ConocoPhillips in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand. I took the company, for better or worse, and I think it was worse, but I took the company into India with the Indian government-owned fuel companies, and also took it into the Middle East, where they are still very active. The point I want to make here, Madam Acting Deputy President, is because of the trade relationships between ourselves and Singapore, this relatively small Western Australian company was successful in winning a contract with the Singapore Armed Forces to actually provide the hardware and the software that controls the supply chain for their entire fuelling, from their underground tanks right through their military vehicles. Not a bad effort for a company that is not a Singaporean company. But the reason I make this point is that it speaks to the strength of the opportunity as a result of our trading relationships with other countries. We didn't have a free trade agreement at that time with Singapore, but I can assure the chamber that the increase in employment that led to, both here in Australia and of Australians having the opportunity to then go and work in these countries, as we transferred technology, I must say, but at the same time Australian-owned, Australian-designed, and with excellence. And I think that's the sort of issue that I want to put before the chamber today in terms of this debate over the flag and the symbolism of what goes beyond it. The second illustration, of course, is that excellent Australian company Cochlear, which, as we know, produces implants for different medical situations associated with hearing. These days, Australia, at least Cochlear, does manufacture in Australia. It is also manufacturing, I understand, in Scandinavia, in Sweden. But at the same time, products that were developed in this country, providing manufacturing opportunities, providing skills, providing training and providing employment, Mr Acting Deputy President. This is the type of area which I believe Australia needs to be getting itself into very, very much more actively and strongly, and with the deepest respect to the movers of the amendment bill. I say that these opportunities exist because of Australia's relationship with its trading partners around the world. And I think there is enormous opportunity into the future for that to happen even further. Another company, Australian company, in, again, the health-related areas, and that is the product ResMed, which is, again, an Australian-designed product, now globally available, manufactured here, and it is a product for the treatment of sleep disorders. Acting Deputy President, I don't know if you suffer those problems. I probably should consult with your wife, but sleep apnea, as we know, is a very dangerous condition. Why do I say spouses? Because it's generally the spouses who grumble most and those who drive their partner towards the sort of technology that this company develops. But we know of instances. When I was residing in Tasmania, through you to Senator Urquhart, that terrible circumstance, I think of a school principal who actually drove off the road between Launceston and Hobart, and I believe that particular accident did lead to some fatalities. It was then discovered that the person suffered sleep apnea. Am I not correct? I think I am back in the 1990s, but I stand to be corrected. But I think that's correct. So the sort of technology, again, Australian-designed, Australian-developed, and once again creating employment opportunities, and more to the point, creating training opportunities for new skills development as the world evolves. The third, or at least the fourth example, is that of CSL, once known as the Commonwealth Serum Laboratories, now CSL Limited, which only as a mark of confidence in the expansion of that industry and its products and its services, only last month was a new facility for CSL Behring biotechnology manufacturing opened in Broadmeadows in Melbourne by the Honourable Ian Macfarlane, Minister for Industry, along with the Premier of Victoria, the Honourable Dennis Napthine MP, and the Minister for Technology, the Honourable Gordon Rich Phillips. Now, we all know the value of CSL in the world of vaccines, Fluvax. We know it's the work they've done, the absolutely pioneering work they have done in the provision of blood products over the years, plasma, vaccines, both in the human world and in my own area of background in the veterinary world. The excellence of that particular organisation, now a company, of course, is there to see. And as the CEO of CSL observed during the occasion of the opening, this world-class facility is key to the ongoing success of our global R&D strategy, reflects our commitments to provide better treatment options for people who suffer from bleeding disorders and other life-threatening conditions. I mean, with what pride do we in Australia have that our country is producing and has produced the sort of product and the sort of service that is so vitally important in the area of haemophilia.
Order. Stop the clock. Senator Xenophon.
This is a relevance issue. It's all very well and good to hear about the cochlear implants and Australian manufacturing technology, but what relevance does this have to the bill that Australian flags flown on top of Australian Commonwealth buildings, government buildings, be made in Australia?
Thank you, Senator Xenophon. You've made your point. Senator Back. Senator Back. The point of order is Senator Back. Just a moment. The point of order is on relevance, and Senator Back is very clearly explaining the proud tradition that Australians manufacturing has and innovation, and so there is typically a free range and quite wide latitude, and I'm sure that Senator Back will be directly referencing the flags very shortly. Senator Back.
I took my lead. Thank you, Acting Deputy President. I actually took my lead from Senator Xenophon when he widened the discussion during his contribution to those matters well beyond the flag, where we were discussing the levels of protectionism versus the opportunities of free trade. If I recall correctly, Senator Xenophon spoke of free trade widely in his contribution, and of course the points I have been making go to the value to Australia, and I'm giving the illustration of the number of companies, products and services which are benefiting and have benefited from the wide trade distribution in our region and around the world. And of course I will conclude my comments on CSL with the observation that this particular factory, opened by the Honourable Ian Macfarlane, will be doing a lot of work in the development of blood clotting factors.
Order. Senator Carr.
Of course, the treatment of haemophilia. And I'm absolutely delighted that my colleague Senator Carr has joined me in agreeing with the position that I'm taking, and that is the excellence of it. In fact, who could not recall the book by Bryce Courtney, April Fool's Day, when he spoke and wrote so eloquently about his haemophiliac son, which allows me, with Senator Xenophon's good grace through you, Acting Deputy President, to observe the fact that at the opening of that laboratory in Broadmeadows, Mr Alain Wheel, the President of the World Federation of Haemophilia, took part in the ceremony and made the observation that the ongoing development of new and improved therapies for haemophilia couldn't be more important to the bleeding disorder community. It's very heartening, he said, to see CSL working with governments in Australia to invest in new technologies and facilities that may benefit people with haemophilia all around the world. And I think that's the important point that needs to be made in this debate. I respect the fact that Senators Xenophon and Madigan have made the point about the use of Australian materials and the use of Australian manufacturing in producing our flag. But as I have read, indeed, I think if I am correct in the information that was given to me, it is in contracts over $80,000 only that they have got to go to tender outside Australia. I learnt a lot. In fact, as I read the transcript, Senator Madigan was making the point in response to answers given, and that is the existence of an ABN, an Australian business number, is not necessarily evidence that in fact that is an Australian company. That's quite correct. But I don't know how many contracts, maybe there are a lot of contracts that exceed $80,000 which would go onto the open market. I would have thought they would have been relatively limited in their scope, but of course I stand to be corrected. One would always encourage, naturally, that where possible Australian icons such as the Australian flag could be produced by Australian manufacturers using Australian materials. But indeed, if, as I think I heard Senator Xenophon say, those materials aren't available, well then what do we want? Do we not want the products to actually be produced at all? So I, for one, would always say very proudly that Australia and Australians should not be disadvantaged and should have the opportunity, and I believe they do have that opportunity, but I don't want to see restrictions or limitations that are constrained upon Australians, particularly if retaliatory action of other countries, other companies in other countries, means that we are then denied access to markets in our region and beyond our region. And I do want to, in the few minutes left available to me, Acting Deputy President, I do want to go to the issues of free trade agreements. And for those who had the opportunity to join with representatives of the dairying industry this morning in the Mural Hall, it was a particularly interesting exercise because dairying has been down in this country for some time, and we're now seeing a resurgence. Indeed, I met with a family, milk production family, in Manjimup in our southwest on the weekend, and they told me that they are exporting directly out of the Singapore market. What is produced this morning is in the market in Singapore tomorrow, and I just thought to myself, what a wonderful opportunity was that. But I was talking to a gentleman from Murray Goulburn about this very question, and he made the observation to me as a result of the free trade agreement between New Zealand and China that was signed in 2008. The New Zealand company Fonterra now has 40% of the fresh milk market in China. And when you think of the excellence of the marketers of the New Zealanders, Senator Brandis, through you, Acting Deputy President, imagine a country that could take a product called Chinese gooseberries, rename them kiwi fruit, produce them in New Zealand, and then under a free trade agreement sell them back into the Chinese market. I think we have a lot to learn from that particular country. I go again now to a Western Australian cooperative bulk handling, which of course is the large grain handling organisation with the biggest supply chain in Australia for grain. But more importantly, because of our relationships with our trading partners, they now have mills, grain mills, flour mills in Vietnam, in Malaysia and in Indonesia. In fact, the mill in Indonesia is the 4th largest, I understand, in the world. Again, an example where we don't want protectionism. We want to be able to compete, in my view, out there on the world stage. We want Australian manufacturing to be excellent. We want participation. We want the opportunities for young people to be optimistic about these industries, to provide them with the skill sets, provide them with the employment prospects, so that they can participate. To the extent that if our Australian flag manufacturers can compete and can produce the product that we want, all well and good. But if it's going to mean that Australian manufacturing, if it's going to mean that Australian skills development and jobs are denied because of retaliatory action, then I, for one, have deep concern about that and would obviously like to discuss that further with my colleagues. And just finally, if I may, Acting Deputy President, by way of just examining the world ahead of us, Senator Xenophon made reference to Toyota and Holden and Ford, and as a Western Australian, with Senator Whish-Wilson in the room, Acting Deputy President, I will make my contribution, Senator Whish-Wilson, to my observations as a Western Australian about the GST and the contribution of the state. You and I had a very interesting discussion between Darwin and Catherine, I remember just recently, and I don't want this morning, in the limited time left to me, to comment on trade protectionism in the southern states of particularly Victoria and New South Wales vis-a-vis Western Australia, but I do want to draw the attention of the chamber to the demonstrations given to us yesterday by the 3D company, in which they were giving us examples now of products actually being printed. And they were telling me that in September this year at the car show in New York, over the 4 days, using this technology, Acting Deputy President, they are going to print a motor car and drive it away. They were telling me now where experimentally they are already taking kidney tissue of people who are on dialysis and need kidney transplants. They are growing that tissue out, and they will be printing new kidneys to go back into that same patient. It is their own tissue. No rejection, no drugs, no immunosuppressant drugs, etc. They were telling me of the instance in space where astronauts are not and will not take tools. They will manufacture them, print them in space. That's the world of the future for me. That's the world into which Australia and young Australians must go. That's where they must be trained. That's where their skills must be developed. And anything at all, in my view, that limits or puts a foot on the hose of that development in the future is not to our advantage.
Thank you, Senator Back.